Hello and welcome. This is Gina from McGuire, and I'm glad you're here. Today I'm sharing with you another way to add bookmarks to your cards. I always like to do bookmarks on cards because it's a fun way to give the recipient a keepsake that they can have to remember you. So these cards actually hold a bookmark, and the bookmark is a word die cut. So I've done different bookmark cards in the past, but today I'm focusing on using large dies to create your bookmark. I also will be doing a mini Slimline version card and showing you how I made the matching envelopes. I actually have 4 cards, all very similar, but I'll show you the process I went through to make them all pretty quickly. You could use any large die to create your bookmark, but I decided to use a large word die and a stamp on top of it. This is the Simon Says Stamp Slimline Beautiful You stamp set. This is a big one, 6x8 with really large words. So it fills a slimline card nicely, but I'm just using some of the words along with this beautiful die set. So this cuts the word beautiful and a shadow for it. And I thought I would team those up along with the stamp image to create a bookmark from the word. Now up there you can see I have a few pieces of white cardstock, all where I've already stamped a message from that stamp set, and we'll be die cutting over those stamped images. Here I'm taping together my dies so they don't shift as I do die cutting of 4. I just think it's easier to tape them together so they stay put. So now I'll start with my first one. I'll line this up over the stamping that I've already done and run it through my die cut machine. There are so many things you could do with these dies and stamps together. It would be fun to just do inlay cards, but I'm going to do an inlay bookmark. Now I'm saving all my bits and pieces all together in a little pile there, and then I'll move on to my next piece. Now, I decided at this point to make 4 cards, so I got out 4 little dishes to keep the parts of each in, so I didn't get them all mixed up. We're going to add different colors to different parts, and I didn't want them to get all mixed together. I find keeping myself organized like that helps me when I'm making multiples of the same card like I'm doing here. Okay, so I have die cut 4 beautifuls with the words already stamped on it, and I have them separated. Now I'll take the pieces apart, so I'm taking the word beautiful from the little outline. That way I can ink them up separately. Once I'm done with that, I'll lay in front of me the 4 pieces that I want to ink for each bookmark. So on the left, I'll ink up the word beautiful itself. The second one there in the middle, that one I'm going to ink up the outside edge or the shadow. Then the third one I'll do the word, and then the fourth one I'll do the shadow again. I'm just trying to keep them in line with the little bowls I have at the top. I'm also adding in the little bits and pieces like the centers of the letters or the dots on the eye. Now I can ink these, and you could ink these any way you want. I actually used the ink that I had sitting out on my desk from my last project that I haven't cleaned up yet. So it's a mix of Distress Inks and Gina K dye inks. Really, you could use anything. I think a dye ink is best. You could also use any inking tool you want. You could use a brayer, ink blending tool, whatever. I just used my Gina K blending brushes, and I'm kind of dabbing the ink on since these are intricate, and I'll kind of do a blended look across the die cut. Now these 2 die cuts on the left, I'm doing a rainbow, and this one that I'm doing now, I'm going to do like yellow, blue, and green. And the one on the right, I'll do pink, orange, and yellow. So that's why you'll see me do a little bit different on each. Now, I realized since these 2 I'm doing rainbow, it'd be faster to put the 2 pieces together and ink them together, and then we'll take them apart. That just allows me to ink the inside of one and the outside of another the same. It's just a time saver. You could have kept them apart if you wanted to. So now I'm doing some Gina K Ink because I thought this turquoise sea would be pretty with that blueprint sketch that we've already done. Now I'm doing some Mowed Lawn for the Distress Ink. Then I did Gina K Wild Dandelion, and then I did Gina K Passionate Pink. So really I just chose whatever dye inks I had sitting out. You could use markers, you could use watercolor, anything goes. All you want to do is cover these parts so they're completely covered, and their partner pieces, the pieces that fit with it, stay white. That way you get that fun inlay when we put them back together. You'll see what I mean in a moment. I thought it would be fun to also give these inked pieces some sparkle. So I'm spraying it pretty generously with Tsukineko Shimmer Spritz. You could also use a shimmer pen here or a glitter spray, or you could even coat it with a sparkle embossing powder. Whatever works for you. I thought this was the fastest. I just sprayed it, then set it aside to dry. While that's drying, let's create the actual bookmark of our die cut. This is actually a folded piece with the fold line over by the B, so it slides over a book page. How I do that is I take a folded piece of cardstock and I place the die so it hangs off a little bit on the folded edge. So I'm using the shadow of the word beautiful. See how it's hanging off the edge of the folded edge? Run it through my die cut machine. It'll cut through both layers. And now we have this folded piece. That way the recipient can slide it over their page and it'll stay in place. If you're using a different die shape, you can still do the same. Just have part of the die hang over the folded edge of your cardstock when you cut it, and you'll end up with a folded bookmark. Okay, so now on the front of one of those folded bookmarks, I'm putting some Gina K Connect. It looks like I'm putting a lot down, but I'm really only putting a little down and moving it around, spreading it to cover the entire top of that bookmark. Then I'll use my finger to kind of spread it around. You could use any adhesive you want here. Spray adhesive, double-sided adhesive, whatever. I'm just trying to cover the whole thing so that I can inlay our die cut pieces on it. So here is the outline first. Then in the opening of that, I will inlay the inked beautiful word. This will give a beautiful smooth look, and it adds interest because you have the stamp greeting going over the white and the colored part. But there's not too much bulk to it because we do want this to fit into a bookmark or into a book nicely. I will also pop in the centers of our words, and there we have a mini bookmark with a nice message on it. You could even write something personal on the back or on the inside for the recipient. After what I do inlay, I do like to take a bone folder and just press back and forth over it to make sure all of it is smooth. That way all the pieces will fit in place and be held against the adhesive. Okay, let's do one more. I have another one of my folded words, and I'm just squeezing a good amount of adhesive on it this time, and this time I'll just smear it around with my finger. So whatever you prefer to do to cover the entire front of that bookmark, then you can start inlaying the pieces. This time I'm using one of the colored outlines, and then I will add in the white die cut. So again, you'll see that continuous stamp sentiment over the inlaid pieces. I'll continue to do this with the other two bookmarks, and then we have 4 ready to go. You can see how it's folded and it'll slide over a page nicely. Now it's time to create cards to hold the bookmarks, something where the bookmark can slide on and off of it. These are very simple to make. Let's start with the background on the card. I use the Simon Says Stamp Chunky Slimline Scalloped Rectangle die set, and I use the second largest one there. This is simply for decoration on the front of our note card. I used this in my last video if you want to check that out too. I die cut 2 of these from white cardstock, and I'm gluing them together for dimension, and then I will glue that onto the front of our note card. Now I'm doing a version of a mini slimline card today. I decided to go with 3 1/4 by 6 1/4, but you could do any size close to that. On the front of that little mini slimline note card, I've glued my rectangles, and then I can trim the excess off the edge. Again, this is just to decorate the front of the card. This isn't actually serving a purpose to hold the bookmark. What is holding the bookmark on the front of our card is that large heart die cut. Any die cut would work here as long as it's taller than your bookmark. So I've got this heart here, and along the top of the die cut in the bottom, I'm gluing some cardstock scraps. Now these are going to form channels to hold our bookmark in place. It looks a little weird here, but I promise it'll make sense in a moment. So if you had a circle or a square or a star, whatever, just put some pieces of extra cardstock along the top and the bottom of that die cut. I'm building this up 2 layers. If you want your bookmark to wiggle a little bit on the front so the recipient knows to remove it, I would do 3 layers. If you want it to kind of stay put but easily come out, I do 1 layer. I'm going with 2 here. In between, it'll stay put enough, but easily slide out. So you can experiment with that. So basically that open area on the back of our die cut is just a slot that we can slide the back of our folded bookmark in, so that the front of the bookmark will be on the front of the heart and the back of the bookmark will be behind it. So here you'll see that because my heart is taller than my bookmark, there's plenty of room for that back to slide in and out between those little blockers that we put at the top and the bottom of the heart. Okay, so now let's glue that down to the front of our card, and you'll see better how it slides in and out. So I put adhesive only on those blockers that we did, or those little channel markers, or whatever you want to call them, at the top and the bottom. And now I'll put that on the front of our card. And now we can slide the back of the bookmark through that, and you'll see that that is what holds our bookmark on the front of the card. And you can always write inside to let the recipient know to keep that bookmark. Now I'll show you the rest of the completed cards in a moment, but first I wanted to show you how I made matching envelopes for these mini Slimline cards. You can buy envelopes this size, but it's fun to make one from pattern paper to match your card. I used this Simon Says Stamp mini Slimline envelope die. This is so easy to use. It has two dies in it, the big one and then the smaller one on the right. You cut the big one once and the smaller one on the right twice. Now it scores this little flap on the smaller pieces. These little flaps get glued to the side of the big one. So you just run liquid adhesive along the side of the bigger die cut. Then you take that little flap and run it right up against the edge so that the crease of the little piece is up against the edge of the big piece. Sorry, my head gets in the way, but there you can see how it's glued there. Then you'll do the same thing with the other piece on the other side. So you're basically forming an envelope here that has a side opening on it. Now again, there are many different mini Slimline envelopes out there, but I think this is a fun way to use your 12 by 12 pattern papers or 8.5 by 11, whatever you have, to create fun envelopes to match your cards. I thought my cards were pretty simple without much color, so to do a colorful envelope was a great way to kind of spice it up. So I glued those two flaps together, and then there's this little flap on the bottom here that you glue up, and there you have your mini Slimline envelope. Super fun, and you can write your recipient name right on there or on a sticker. If you're looking for fun pattern papers to use to make envelopes, I highly recommend checking out the pattern papers from Fawn. That's what I used today, and there's so many fun color combinations. Okay, so let's look at all of my completed cards and envelopes. So on this one, I have the bold color along the outside of our die cut inlay, and I used some Simon Says Stamp gray fog cardstock in the background. There you can see the sparkle on the color that we added. I could have gone more bold with the color, but I wanted a soft look to these. I also like how the stamp sentiment goes over the inlay. Now you'll see that the bookmark slides easily out. It's the folded bookmark that slides right onto your book page. Let me show you a photo of how it works on a book. Just slides right over the top and it stays in place nicely. Now on this particular one, I only put 2 layers of stoppers at the top and bottom, so it kind of holds that bookmark there so it doesn't wiggle too much, but it still slides out nicely. Same with this one. On this one, I used a gold glitter cardstock. Oh, and by the way, I did add little pearls to the scallop in the background just to give a little more embellishment to it. There you can see the sparkle on our inking and also the stamp sentiment across the inlay. So let's see how this one comes out. You can see it slides out very easily. Now on this one again, I used 2 strips of cardstock glued behind the heart at the top and the bottom so it wouldn't wiggle too much. Now this one, I did 3 strips of cardstock behind the heart at the top and the bottom so that there's a little more room there for it to wiggle around. So if you really want this to move when they open it so they see it comes off, you could do this, or just make it a little bit tighter on the back by not putting as many layers on those little stoppers. And here's a look at our 4th and final card. Now I used a large word die for today's bookmark. In fact, I used one that had a shadow so I could do that fun, colorful inlay. You could do this with a large oval die. You could do this with maybe a tall flower. Just try what you have, but I think word dies work really well. They're not too big. It has a message already incorporated into it. And then remember you could always write a personal message inside the bookmark too. Okay, so there is a way to take your large dies and turn them into a bookmark to incorporate onto your card. I hope you'll try this. I will link here at the end to a couple other bookmark cards I've done in the past if you want to check those out. Also, all of the supplies I used are linked below in my YouTube description, and you can find my blog by clicking here on the top right. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you soon.